Hey nerds! In a society tens of thousands of years in the future where they can fold space and travel between the stars, why would soldiers prefer to fight using swords instead of energy weapons? Welcome to Dune, where Lasguns meet Holtzman shields and everything goes kaboom! Now, you guys, while Herbert may not have been thinking about any deep science when he was writing this book, I am. So, let's science Dune.
Is this what you seek? Good. The slow blade penetrates the shield.
There are 4 components to the problem that we're going to try to solve today, and the first one is the lasgun. Now, I recently made a video about Star Trek's phasers, which are not lasers, but this is definitely a laser. We don't really need to say much more about that because we know that we can create directed energy weapons. Like, that's not an issue for us. They don't have the energy or like the destructive power that we tend to see in science fiction, but it is very real technology based on very real laser physics. So, you know, we can extrapolate into our futuristic sci-fi ideas. But if you do have any questions on this, I am very happy to make a video about it. Just let me know. But for today, we're not going to question lasguns. We can take it as totally plausible, but like in a far future where they figure out how they can pack a bit of a bigger punch into a teeny tiny handheld device. Handheld. Tongue twisters. You can almost see when my brain breaks sometimes. Anyway, this brings us to the second component of the problem today, and this is the one that we really need to talk about, and that is the Holtzman shield. Now, these are mostly personal shields that create a field of energy around somebody's body, but they can also be like large force fields around towns and buildings. This is completely fictional, but it goes so much deeper. Now, a disclaimer here is that I believe that what I'm about to say mostly comes from things like the Dune Encyclopedia and the extended stories. I admit that I don't have a copy of it. I do want one, but like, I can't have nice things until I finish my PhD and get like a grown-up job. The point that I'm trying to make here is that I don't know if these explanations are written by Frank Herbert or not. So we can take these ideas with a bit of a pinch of salt. Like, not to say that the extended work isn't valid in the universe. It's just that it might not be exactly what Herbert put into his world building originally, but also, guys, I can't really remember like how much of this is actually in the original series. So, you know, it's fiction. It's fine. We're just having fun here. We're not going to stress about it too much, but just for those of you who might have something to say about it. But what I did find really interesting is when you look into the descriptions of the Holtzman shield, it says that it uses the Holtzman Effect, which is based on an entirely fictional physicist who developed a theory about the repellent force of subatomic particles. And this theory allowed for a bunch of different technology that we see in Dune. And I love how it's expanded out. Like, it's not real. Let's be clear. There's this fictional theory, this idea that they're talking about, it's not real, but it's fun. The theory had different dimensions, you see. So a one-dimensional effect allows for Holtzman waves. Now, I'm going to say I'm not sure how that's 1D. I just think that they're just thinking or imagining a wave as a singular line, and that's why they're saying it's a 1D effect. But these waves are what allow for instantaneous communication across space within the Dune universe. The two-dimensional effect then creates adjustable planes of force that are used in the Holtzman shields. They align multiple planes to surround an object, and then these forces repel fast-moving particles while allowing slow-moving particles or slow-moving objects to pass through. The three-dimensional effect then, that is what creates a sphere of this repulsive force and makes the suspensors and the glow globes work. It basically somehow creates anti-gravity by cancelling out the gravitational attraction. And then, you guys, the higher dimensional effect allows them to fold space and time. I have a lot of thoughts on like this Holtzman effect and what I think is happening here. And if you want that as a video, then please do let me know. But that is not the question for today. Today, we want to know why you can't use a lasgun with a Holtzman shield, or why they favor blades in battle over projectile weapons. So one of the major effects of a Holtzman shield is that it repels fast-moving objects. It's velocity selective. So it lets slow-moving objects through, but not bullets.
The slow blade penetrates the shield.
Now you might wonder, well, why would you even let blades through? Well, there is a completely logical answer for this. If it blocked all objects, then no air would move through and people would suffocate. So there has to be a velocity threshold to allow things that you need, like air and sound and, I don't know, probably food or something to pass through. And since air moves at about 500 meters per second, that is going to open you up to the swoosh of a sword or a blade. So that explains why they don't use projectiles. But what about laser beams? Because sure, of course, a laser beam is the fastest moving object traveling at the speed of light. But laser beams are made out of massless photons. So if the action of the shield is like a repulsive force on atoms, then that force surely doesn't apply to a laser beam. Now, that's not to say that there aren't materials that can reflect or like repel a laser beam. They definitely can. But that's not what's being described in the world of Dune. And that brings us to the third component, and that is subatomic fusion. So Herbert says that if the beam from a lasgun hits a Holtzman field, then the result will be a nuclear explosion due to subatomic fusion. Now, on the one hand, like, this is fine. Powerful laser hits a material and causes fusion. Like, that sounds totally logical. For the time it was written in, I have absolutely no problem with this, like, subatomic fusion being used as a description. What we know about fusion is that it needs extreme pressures and temperatures to force the atoms to overcome the repulsive force and then let strong nuclear force take over, causing them to fuse together. When this happens, the atom that they become is smaller in mass energy than the two that you started with, and so the extra mass energy gets released. And if you can create the right environment that lets this happen repeatedly, then you're releasing large amounts of energy. Now, in real physics experiments at the National Ignition Facility in the US, they use what's called inertial confinement fusion. Now, this is when a very small pellet of material is surrounded by 192 lasers. The pressure from the lasers creates a uniform effect that forces the material to fuse. I don't know of any way that you could make this work with a single laser. Also, you need a material. And we don't actually know what the Holtzman field is made of. All we know is that it's some sort of force field that is in some cases creating an anti-gravity effect, but for the shield it's creating a repulsive effect. It's depicted as a sort of energy field of some sort, but it's also like fairly transparent. The classic answer here would be to say that it is made of plasma. But then we have the same issues that we have with a lightsaber. Like, there's no containment field for the particles. There's no way to shape them. If it's some sort of like electric or magnetic field, then it's not really using atoms, so there's no fusion. Now, normal atoms just in the air around us, they're not going to have random chemical reactions unless there's some reason for it. For the most part, they'll just like zip around the place. They might bump into each other, but that doesn't have any effect other than to change the direction that the atom is moving in. So we have to imagine the Holtzman field as something that is manipulating the space around the person, creating a force field that enhances this natural repulsive force between atoms depending on their velocity. But for a laser beam, there's nothing to repel. However, The photons don't pass straight through the field. Whatever this field is, it interacts with the laser. Now, we can't really say if the field itself is supposed to be made of particles, so the interaction must be between the laser and the atoms in the air, but the field is mediating it or enhancing it in some way that is causing a nuclear reaction between them, releasing energy. Now, fusion doesn't work in this context, but another nuclear reaction would, so I think it's fine to imagine a large explosion without it needing to be fusion. So we can just say a nuclear reaction instead of subatomic fusion. Now, the interesting thing is that a high-power laser can ionize air. So if the Holtzman field is creating a sort of suspension of the atoms in the region with the field as some sort of confining medium, then it makes sense to imagine that the laser hitting the shield would ionize the air around it and create a contained plasma. And this opens up a bunch of other possibilities that help us explain the final part to this technology. That is component number 4, the location of the interaction. You see, you might be thinking, well, if the laser ionizes the area of the shield and turns it into a plasma, creating a nuclear reaction, why don't they freaking use them? Why is it such a big deal to hit a Holtzman field with a lasgun? Well, Herbert's reasoning was that the explosion doesn't have to happen where the lasgun meets the shield. It can happen there, but it can also happen at the lasgun or anywhere in the space between the two. So what kind of interaction allows energy to appear away from the point of impact? I'm about to surprise you nerds. You see, I happen to be a plasma physicist, and my research is specifically about laser-plasma interactions. Lasers are electromagnetic fields, and electromagnetic fields are not passive. They interact with other fields, and they couple to things, and they can become very unstable. When a laser interacts with matter, it can create a plasma. It can drive wake fields, it can accelerate electrons, produce harmonics, generate more radiation, and create instabilities. And there's a really interesting thing about these instabilities. You see, energy can build up in unexpected places. Energy in electromagnetic systems can reflect and resonate. Now, when the laser couples into the plasma field, you can get these like standing wave structures, and then multiple reflections can create feedback patterns. This means that where the energy is in the system isn't always at the original interaction point. Energy can build up in other locations in this coupled system, depending on this standing wave configuration. Now, to be clear, I think that the coupled interaction existing over the distance between two people is probably a stretch. Normally, we're talking about the region where the fields overlap. For the lasgun itself to explode, some mechanism must allow energy to couple back into the weapon, similar to how reflected power can damage real lasers, microwave systems, or RF equipment. So while standing waves and resonances might explain why the interaction becomes unstable, the idea that either the shield or the lasgun can become like the failure point probably requires a catastrophic feedback process rather than simple like energy deposition alone across the region. But this works for us because Herbert describes it as a catastrophic energy release. Not the same thing, I know, but it's sci-fi, come on. Now, for all this, they can still use lasguns. It's just that you want to make sure that the shield is down before you fire. Luckily or unluckily, in the deserts of Arrakis, you can't use shields. The vibrations of the field that gets created is too rhythmic, and you risk a worm call. No matter what, for this all to work, the Holtzman shield needs to have some like pretty special properties to allow it to cause all of these effects and to store enough energy to create a nuclear explosion. But that's the beauty of good sci-fi, isn't it, right? Like, they don't try to explain it. It's a MacGuffin, you guys. It's the device that causes the effect, but we don't really need to know, like, how the device itself works. We just accept that it is what it is, and that's what the Holtzman shield is. It's just fun for me to speculate about it, and then we get to learn some interesting things about real physics along the way. At the end of the day, I do not think that Herbert was thinking about laser plasma instabilities when he wrote these books. He was definitely just trying to find some sort of a way to explain how a world can, like, have laser guns, but still have battles fought using hand and sword. And honestly, with all of the complexities that he came up with, we get the best of it all. We have lasguns, we have swords, we have worms, and we have hand-to-hand combat. Whatever his intentions were, it works for me. But the question is, does it work for you? Like, do you have a better explanation? Are there any Dune nerds out there who have any suggestions for how the Holtzman shield might actually work, or what it might actually be made of? Leave your comments and suggestions, and thanks for watching. I'm Abby, I'm a physicist, and I like to talk about the science of science fiction, as well as some big ideas in physics. If you like that, then you should subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, then maybe you want to check out my Patreon for extra content if you're interested, no pressure. Now, if there are any sci-fi topics or any science topics in the news that you want me to do like a mini weekly breakdown on, then please do let me know. And if you liked this video, you might like my video all about phasers, or you can just check out my pop science playlist here. Thanks for watching again. Stay nerdy.